Reread paragraph 2. How does Lincoln use the battlefield literally and metaphorically to convey his message? In this lesson, you will learn how an author develops an idea by analyzing the literal and metaphorical uses of a word. Let's review. We've been reading Abraham Lincoln's speech, the Gettysburg Address. This is a non-fiction persuasive speech that Lincoln gave on November 19, 1863, after the Battle of Gettysburg. Let's also review literal and figurative language. A word's literal meaning is the meaning as is defined in the dictionary. A metaphor is a type of figurative language that makes a direct comparison to help illustrate a concept or idea. Figurative language deviates from the literal meaning. Here's an example. If I use the sentence, "Stop playing games with me," it would literally mean I am telling someone to stop playing a game with me like chess. However, I am probably going to mean it in a metaphorical sense, in which I am telling someone to stop trying to manipulate me. A game like chess is a great comparison to manipulation because in both cases the opposition uses subtle tactics to achieve his goal. To accomplish our task, we are going to use the following 3 steps. Reread, noticing descriptions. Ask, is this description literal or figurative? And ask, how do the descriptions develop the author's idea? Reread paragraph 2. How does Lincoln use the battlefield literally and metaphorically to convey his message? The question lets me know that I am just going to focus on the second paragraph. My first step is to reread and notice descriptions, so I'm going to reread paragraph 2 and look for all the descriptions that have to do with a battlefield, since that is the idea in which we are exploring its literal and metaphorical use. Now we are engaged in a great civil war. I'm going to stop and highlight this because it is describing the magnitude of the civil war that is currently happening, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. This I will also highlight because it refers to the ideals of the nation. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. Okay, I'm going to highlight great battlefield because this is our focus. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place. This here I will highlight because it is explaining the importance of this battlefield and the loss of life. For those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. I'm also going to stop and highlight this because it is giving significance to the sacrifice that the soldiers gave. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. I have highlighted descriptions that tie to the concepts of a battlefield, so my next step is to ask, is this description literal or metaphorical? I am combining a few of the descriptions so that there is some context to them, since that makes a difference in whether it is literal or metaphorical. The great battlefield is referring to both the Civil War battlefield, which is literal, and the opposing viewpoints with the metaphorical battle, so it's actually both. The Great Civil War is a literal description. Field as a final resting place is a literal reference, and it lets us know that people died fighting in a war on that field. Testing a nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure is a metaphorical description over the battle of liberty and equality. Gave their lives that that nation might live relates to the figurative description. Although people really did give their lives, the purpose Lincoln gives here of keeping the nation alive is metaphorical. Okay, how do these descriptions develop the author's idea? His literal description of the battlefield helped him to explain that there was a civil war. He is also explaining that people fought on the battlefield and died. People use metaphors to compare ideas or concepts to create a clearer picture for the audience. He is comparing the conflicting views over liberty and equality to a battlefield. The image of a battlefield helps the audience to imagine how challenging the conflict over liberty and equality is and how important those ideals are, as well as how important it is for the nation that liberty and equality win the fight. I have completed all the steps, so now I'm going to put them all together to answer the question, how does Lincoln use the battlefield literally and metaphorically to convey his message? Lincoln and his audience are gathered on a great battlefield of that war, the war being the Great Civil War, to dedicate a portion of that field to those who died in battle. Lincoln also uses the war and the battlefield as a metaphor for the struggles within the nation. Lincoln uses the metaphorical battlefield to illustrate the war to preserve the American ideals of liberty and equality. The battlefield they stand on represents the deaths of men who fought in that war and the possible death of American ideals. The 3 steps we used today were: reread noticing descriptions, ask, is this description literal or figurative? Ask, how do these descriptions develop the author's idea? In this lesson, you have learned how an author develops an idea by analyzing the literal and metaphorical uses of a word.